pretty warmed up by this point. Anyway, yo, what's up? If you guys are watching this on YouTube, how are you doing? Today is part 3 of our, well, right now on Twitch, but today on YouTube is part 3 of our second episode of This Week in Geek, which is a new series I'm doing here on Twitch. Every single Wednesday is when we record it. They go live on YouTube on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday consecutively by the 3 topics that we discuss. So every week for 30 minutes, we break down, discuss a topic, and then on Twitch only, at the end of that, we do a free-for-all where we just talk about everything. So if you want to be part of the discussion live, jump on in, hang out with us as we record these on Wednesday. Generally, we start about 6:30, and the topic discussions start at 7 and go for about a half an hour. If you can't do that, or if you're catching this on YouTube, join the discussion down below. Keep it going all week long. I love these discussions. And like the last one that we were just talking about, we didn't get anywhere with it. It was just a big roundabout discussion, but man, is that shit fun. So we are going to set our timer here because our next topic, I don't know if you guys heard, but the director for Jack, thank you very much for hitting that in chat, Carnegie, or for Carnegie. So the director of Doctor Strange 2, Scott Derrickson, is off the project. He's no longer writer-director. He will still have a producer credit for the movie. Both he and Marvel have cited, what's the term that they used? Have cited creative differences. Yes, thank you, Splinter Shield. They have cited creative differences around Doctor Strange 2 as to why he's off the project now. It's led to a lot of speculation that he was trying to go too horror, gothic, scary, pushing the border of PG-13 rated R, which Kevin Feige was not at all down with. And if you saw last year at Comic-Con when they were on stage and they introduced this, both Kevin Feige and Scott Derrickson were right there. And Scott Derrickson said, we are going to make the first scary MCU movie and you're going to love it. Or he said, we're making the first very scary Marvel movie. And somebody in the front row was like, rated R? And Kevin Feige was like, nope, PG-13, and you're going to love it. And so that has caused a lot of speculation that essentially Scott Derrickson was trying to push that boundary and make it too scary, too adult, too dark. And Kevin Feige and Marvel did not want that for their movie. Which happens all the time, right? I think that's normal. In something like this, Scott Derrickson has made horror films. That's where he came up through. If you saw the first Doctor Strange, I thought it was friggin' brilliant. I thought it was really, really well done. The way that, I wouldn't say they added horror or scary elements, but the way that they added kind of surreal ideas and all of that, I really, really liked. Well, Jack, that's where I'm getting at with this. Because what happened, Jack in chat, you guys can see it right there. Yay, the video should record that, hopefully. But anyway, actually, I don't know if that works or not. So if it didn't work, Jack just said in chat that you got to take into account most Marvel movies are for kids to watch. And this is where, to me, this discussion breaks into. Because I was on Twitter, which it's so weird that a lot of these stories start with, I'm on Twitter, and most of them are negative. But anyway, Twitter's just a fucking cesspool. But a lot of awesome people on Twitter too. Yo, what's up, young fan? So I was on Twitter and it was in the thread about this. And somebody was like, oh, Marvel just needs to back off and let people make the movies that they want to make. And I was like, yeah, that didn't work out so well for Star Wars with Episode 8, right? They essentially let Rian Johnson come in, make the movie that he wanted to make, and it fucked the entire third trilogy. To the point that some people won't even see Episode 9, Splinter Shield, because of it, right? And he was given complete director control, and it effed the entire third trilogy. And not only did it F that, but like a big complaint of people that don't like Rise of Skywalker, and even me, I really loved Rise of Skywalker, but a big part of that movie is constructed to undo or to fix what we didn't like about Episode 8. So that's what happens if you give a director complete creative control when you're trying to make a bigger story, right? If you are trying to have this overarching, I'm just going to go with overarching. I still think it's supposed to be overarching because it's an arc. But anyway, if you're trying to construct an overarching story that all of these pieces need to fit into, then each director that you get needs to understand that they need to fit into that. And I get that he wants to make a scary movie, right? I get it. I 100% would be on board with that. I also am on board with pushing the boundaries of PG-13 to R. But where I don't think that the directors should have all of this control is when you are part of a series like Marvel or Star Wars. Man, you can't have 7, 8, 9-year-old kids who want to see what happens with Spider-Man. Even though Spider-Man might not be in Doctor Strange, you can't see this movie without seeing that one. You can't see this one without seeing that one, because you miss so much. If you miss one Marvel movie, you miss a good portion of the overarching storyline. And so you can't have 7, 8-year-old kids going into a PG-13 movie with a dude like Nightmare being essentially Freddy Krueger and just not showing blood, right? Because essentially, to push the boundaries in a horror or scary movie for PG-13 to R, to keep it PG-13, you take out blood and you take out like gore, right? That's essential, and language, right? So you can make a rated R horror flick, take out blood, take out gore, take out like gratuitous violence, like bones breaking, or when you actually see a knife hitting skin or like showing open wounds. You take that out, take out the language, and you've got PG-13. You can't have 7, 8-year-old kids going into that movie. You know, this is a whole reason why we have PG-13 in the first place, because this happened in the 80s with Gremlins 2, which was the first ever, which is the reason why we have PG-13, because that movie was rated PG, which is parental guidance, which is good for most audiences. And that movie was scary as shit for kids at that time. At that time, please remember that, because you've got this cute little Mogwai who just gets torn to shreds as he becomes, you know, Stripe or whatever. So, so I'm curious where you guys think this goes, right? Should directors or the studio have more control? And at what point do you think the studio needs to back off and let the directors do what they want to do? Because you still want to have the movie that they want to make, because the more passionate they are about a movie, right? The more control over it they have, the more they're going to know the characters, the deeper the movie is going to be. Subcontext within the movie and within the dialogue and within the acting is going to be a lot more real and make a better movie, right? But you give them too much control and you jack your whole franchise. So I'm curious what you guys think about that. Episode 9 was good, but damage control, completely agree. They should have let JJ do all 3 movies. Completely agree with that too. Although next week we'll talk about it. Here's a tease for next week's episode. We're going to talk about the new rumors of the other episode 9, the original episode 9 script that was supposedly leaked. The tone and visuals are way out of sync with the rest of the MCU. It's not going to work. It will, if it's done the way that they were going to do. I mean, see that, I think visuals and tone being out of sync could still work, because we are dealing with a multiverse. We are dealing with magic and alternate universes and, you know, all of these weird psychedelic others, right? Like all of this reality doesn't necessarily exist, right? So you can go to different realities. You can go to more scary. Which actually is one thing we talked about last week with the New Mutants. I actually think that movie is the perfect way to launch mutants into the MCU. If you cross it with something like Doctor Strange, right? Completely different themes, different tones, but you could completely use those to build the bridge from one universe to the next. I think JJ was doing other stuff. And Star Wars, I remember... Splinter Shield in chat just said he thinks JJ was either too busy or wanted too much money for them originally. If I remember correctly, when they did it, Kathleen Kennedy and Disney wanted 3 different directors to have that feel of what the Marvel movies were doing. Right? Because at that time, the Marvel movies, while the Russo brothers came on and did like 3 or 4 of them, up to that point, they had all of these different directors that were directing it, and each movie, while being a part of its own thing, had its own feel and theme, and that kind of kept it fresh. So I think they wanted to go with different ones. Do I like pop vinyls? I have some, yes, but that's because of the talk show nature of this, like random questions like that. I tend to not get too in depth. There's a free for all segment coming up in 20 minutes that I'll talk about that, Carnegie. You can see the difference from episode 7 and 9. He did no completely. In regards to especially Marvel, how much do you think, and this is another one of those no problem, Carnegie. I totally dig. And that's why I didn't want to just ignore it, but I also, I wanted to let you know that like with this time kind of new thing, it's a new segment here too. It's something new I'm doing. So I'm still trying to figure out, right, how the flow works and everything else. And the more we do it, the more refined and flawless the process will be. Terminator franchise suffers from this. Oh, huge, Jack. That's a great example. That's an absolutely amazing example. But I also think the Terminator franchise suffers from this because they never know from one movie to the next whether they're going to do more. They always have plans to do another trilogy. They did it with MCJ. What the hell was that director's name? MGC, whatever, the dude that did Salvation. They had a plan to do that whole trilogy from that. And then there was a bunch of controversy when that movie came out. And that movie, I actually really, really loved it. But yeah, that's a perfect example. Because then, they didn't really have an overarching storyline, or maybe they did, but then the movie didn't do well enough, so then they didn't commit to it. And then, actors, this person, they delay it, so then this actor is doing this, or this director is off doing this other thing. Another good one was Ghostbusters. Do you mean the new remake? Oh, Carnage. Okay, I got you, man. Oh yeah, I can see that now. I can see that. Sorry, I'm used to my Australian buddy Carnage, whose name is spelled completely different, because essentially he spelled it phonetically with an Australian accent. The all-female one. See though, that's actually kind of the exact opposite. That wasn't so much director control versus studio. That was the studio wanted to do something and they couldn't get the actors, right? The studio wanted to do essentially what the new Ghostbusters movie is going to be, right? A direct sequel to either Ghostbusters 1 or 2. And like Bill Murray didn't want to come back. They couldn't get the original, so then they had to do something else. And I don't know if they couldn't find somebody that couldn't make a sequel without those guys, or maybe they didn't want to make a sequel without them. And then you get that. I actually kind of liked the all-female Ghostbusters. I thought it was interesting enough. I thought it was a cool, fun movie in its own universe. I don't think it had anything to do with Ghostbusters. Like it felt like it should be in a different universe, and maybe it is. Maybe it exists in an alternate timeline. Who knows? But like that's something, if you missed Captain Marvel, you could go from Infinity War to Endgame and be a little bit confused, right? If you missed Captain Marvel. You'd kind of wonder at the end, like, whoa, where'd this shit come from? Like, what the hell is her power, right? But the overarching story doesn't get hurt too much. But Doctor Strange 2, in particular, is an extremely important movie because it's one of the first movies in Phase 4 that's really going to drive the overall narrative. I think we're going to get, when the Black Widow movie comes out, I think we're on it. We're going to get... What that's going to do for Phase 4 or Phase 5 is it's going to introduce possibly things with Ross's Thunderbolts, with General Ross's Thunderbolts. But more than likely, it's just going to introduce us to whoever's going to take on the new Black Mantle, or Black Widow mantle, right? Whoever's going to be the new Black Widow. She'll be introduced. But that's pretty much it. Maybe a post-credit scene to tease, Shang-Chi, whatever that movie is. Maybe a post-credit scene to tease, what's going on in Spider-Man's universe or something like that. Or to tease WandaVision, right? Because that's coming out. But WandaVision and Doctor Strange 2, in my opinion, are the most important Marvel movies over the next 2 years. Because I think this is where we're going to get our seeds planted for the next overarching villain, right? Whether that be Doctor Doom, going all the way to like Avengers 5, or whether it be Galactus going for the next 10 years, right? What they did with Thanos over 10 years, I think they're honestly going to do with either Doctor Doom or somebody else over 10 years. And I think they have a plan. And as complete speculation, I would not be surprised if they had a plan for Galactus in 20 fucking years, right? Or something massively huge like that. And I think Doctor Strange is going to be where they introduce those ideas. So this is an extremely important pivotal movie. And if it was creative control in those regards, I almost wonder if he was pulled because of how pivotal this movie is, and they could not afford, literally they could not afford for people not to see it, right? Because it's going to drive the overarching storyline so much that they couldn't afford for 8-9-year-old kids to not be there. And they said that somebody's going to be introduced in the movie that nobody's going to be able to guess. So it's possible that they introduce Ghost Rider or Moon Knight or somebody else like that that's going to be huge in the upcoming Marvel, in the upcoming MCU moving forward, and they really can't afford for people to miss it. I'm curious if that's it. Black Widow kicks off Phase 4, but I don't think Black Widow is going to be as important a movie to Phase 4, Phase 5, or the future of the MCU as Doctor Strange is. They put Ghost Rider in the MCU, people lose their minds. Oh, they will eventually. He's too big of a character for them to leave out, especially as they start getting more into magic and multiverses, and if they get into heaven, hell, like those sorts of ideas and concepts. I think we see Johnny Blaze or a version of Hellraiser or Hellrider or Ghost Rider. God damn it, I can't talk today. Ghost Rider before too long. I really, really do think that we see Ghost Rider sooner rather than later, possibly on his own show. I mean, we already saw him in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So, and that's still technically somewhat loosely MCU. I'd like to see them actually fully make a connection in those regards, which is, again, that goes back to this whole discussion again, because the whole reason why those haven't been completely nailed down and like having crossovers is because like studio wanted to do it. First director wanted it to be its own thing. Studio was like, no, man, this is all the bigger universe, which is why there's Easter eggs in that, like the Netflix MCU. There's Easter eggs towards the overall MCU, but there's been no crossovers. Is there gonna be a new Ant-Man? No, I mean the same Ant-Man, but yeah, they're Ant-Man 3, I believe, has been greenlit. I'm pretty sure that's one of the officially announced Marvel movies moving forward. Come Free for All, I'll mention the CW shows tied in. Yeah, I did see that. I saw that yesterday. It was something, yeah, that's definitely one of the other things I wanted to talk about in Free for All. And there was hope it's him and Cassie in it. It's possible. Yo, Asatrax, what's up, man? Thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. Baby Yoda says hi. So what we're talking about right now is whether or not who should have more control over a movie, the studio or directors. Should directors have complete control over a project, or should the studio be able to step in and rein in the director a little bit to maintain consistency throughout an entire overarching story? I think Ant-Man 3 will probably have his daughter in it. I don't see why. I mean, all the big rumors that they're moving towards the new Avengers, or the young Avengers, or both. And if they move towards the young Avengers, then Cassie is one of them. So yeah, I don't see why she wouldn't be in the next one. She's gone for 5 years because of the snap, so she grew up in the comics. She becomes a superhero. Right. I'm trying to remember what her name is. Stature is her name. So yeah, and the thought process is that they either do some kind of new Avengers with time travel, because they made, what the hell is Stark's daughter's name in the movie? I can't remember her name, but anyway, they've got her, but she's far too young now. But you either fast forward 15 years, 10 years, 15 years or so, or there's some time travel where she comes back from the future into the now, after she's made a set or whatever. She could be, the new Iron Man for the young Avengers. And because the new Hawkeye's daughter was shown in these movies, so was Ant-Man's daughter. So I don't think they're going to bring Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow back. I just don't think they are. They can't in this reality. Time travel or not, they can't in this reality. Her soul is gone. Her soul is imprisoned. The only way they could get it back is like if Hawkeye went there and gave up his soul to free her, that would probably work. Or they could bring a Black Widow from another reality to this reality, but it wouldn't be the same Black Widow. It would be a different Black Widow. So the way that I think they bring Black Widow back is in name alone, and the woman in this movie that's playing her sister, will be the new Black Widow. She'll have the Black Widow mantle. She'll be known as Black Widow, even though she's not Scarlett Johansson. Honestly, if they bring back Scarlett Johansson, I think it really... I would not be cool with them bringing back her as Black Widow unless they do like an alternate reality version of her, because it would totally mean that death means nothing in this universe and it wouldn't matter anymore. Like, no sacrifice would actually... It would undo what she did in Endgame. And I hate saying that because I know a lot of people are saying that, like, stuff in episode 9 undoes what Vader does. No, it doesn't. Skywalker name became a title in episode 9. Oh, yeah, but the original script that got leaked, supposedly, this week, the original title, and not the J.J. Abrams cut, but the first director that was on the project, was episode 9, Duel of the Fates. Pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. There is definitely some cool stuff in that script. We're going to talk about that next week, though. Because there's some really, really cool stuff, but I want to go through it all, so I'm way more prepared for that one. And literally, I woke up to that news today. I just didn't have enough time to get it into today's show. So there, I don't believe it because it makes her death no impact. No, I completely agree. I completely agree, Jack. And like the idea that Rise of Skywalker undoes Vader's sacrifice is complete bullshit, because he killed the Emperor, right? And even if the Emperor survived that, which he didn't, but even if he did, he still ended the Empire with that, right? And like the rebels won, and he saved his son. His son did not die, so Vader's sacrifice saved his son's life. So yeah, no, nothing that happens in episode 9 undoes Vader's sacrifice. But if you bring back Scarlett Johansson as her original Black Widow by somebody else sacrificing themselves, it completely undoes that. But then that even brings up the oh man. No, that would actually, I think that would create another divergent reality. You ever find that book? Rise of Lord Vader? I didn't even look, to be honest with you. I think you know what? I think if I have it, it's in that box right there that I can see. Not that box right there helps you at all. But if I have it here, it's in that box. But I think I loaned it to somebody like 20 years ago and 15 years ago. And I think they still have it. So, as Admiral Adama says, never loan a book. Just give them away. Never expect it back. And that's kind of how I always am. Whenever I've loaned a book, I've never expected it back. Where were we at? I totally lost my train of thought. I don't understand that argument because Vader Legacy was completed by Kylo the moment spoilers began. He gave up his life for Rey. Well, because the theory being that if the Emperor is still alive and if he didn't die and he's just back, then Vader's sacrifice was for nothing because he didn't kill the Emperor, right? He didn't bring balance to the Force, blah, 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 which is what that whole theory of bringing balance to the Force is that if Vader kills the Emperor, he creates one Sith, one Jedi, thereby bringing balance to the Force, right? Because there's him and there's Luke, right? So it brings balance to the Force. But that is paradoxical in nature because if that happens, and Vader sacrifices himself, or, I mean, he kind of knew he wasn't going to live through that. He's brought back to the light, which then keeps the Force imbalanced because now there's only Jedi, right? He wipes out the Sith. Hey, what's up, Osatrax? Thank you very much for the follow, man. I totally appreciate it. How are you doing tonight? We've got 5 minutes to go on this discussion. So if you have any opinions on, who should be in more control, directors or movie studios, where it comes to, especially when it comes to overarching stories, Marvel, Star Wars, DC, things like that, chime in now. Free for all will start in about 5 minutes. So, Vader couldn't have known Palpatine had a clone. But he could have. He could have. Probably didn't, but he could have. I don't think he would have known. I think that's something that Palpatine would have kept to himself as like a last ditch effort. Oh shit. But it is possible, like that script came out and said today, that Palpatine would have told Vader where that was. So if Luke possibly killed Palpatine at some point, Vader could resurrect him or bring him back. Essentially, your internet was playing up. No worries, man. I totally appreciate it, Os. Is it Osatrax? I'm terrible with names, so I don't know if it's Osatrax or Osatrax, Akatrax. But the Triple X, it's always cool. If you're down for Triple X Throwdown, dial 1-900 Mix-a-Lot and kick them nasty thoughts. Baby got back. You honestly agree studio should have given the money to JJ to do episode 8? If it was money, I agree. I don't think it was money though. OCE tracks? Asa tracks? I'm so clueless with names, man. It's so damn difficult. I like Carnage earlier had to do it like 4 different times before my stupid brain could comprehend it. I'm going to blame too much acid. Yeah, I'm not honestly sure about that. I don't think it was money, though. I think it was timing was something else. I want to say J.J. Abrams was doing something else. Because there was Matt Trank, who was originally supposed to do episode 8 that didn't do it, or either got kicked off the project or backed out because of something else, and that's why they brought in Rian Johnson. God damn. Can you imagine? That was right about the same time that all the Ron Howard stuff was going down with Solo. Could you imagine if they would have gotten Ron Howard for episode 8 instead of Rian Johnson? OCE tracks. Okay. OCE tracks. Gotcha. You think directors should be let to have their own spin on the movie since they're the ones directing it? And to an extent, I agree with that, OCE tracks. But what happens then, and this is what happened earlier, and I'm curious what your answer to this would be. What happens in something like Marvel, where if, I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan, but like with episode 8, the entire trilogy got derailed because they gave Rian Johnson complete control to make the movie he wanted to make. And that wasn't necessarily the direction that whoever was going to do episode 9 wanted it to go or thought it should go. And so a big portion of episode 9 was spent fixing episode 8. And when you have Marvel, who has all of these big plans spanning 5-10 years, decades and decades of plans that they want to do with their movies, and this being one of the first and pivotal movies in this new phase, man, if you can't, I think at some point, I tend to agree with you, especially in standalone movies. I think directors should have complete creative control. If they got together when they hired the director and they're like, what's your vision for this movie? And that director was like, yo, I'm going to make a XXX hardcore porn. And they're like, yeah, it's not going to work. Then they probably shouldn't sign that director. Whereas if that director is like, yo, I'm going to make a XXX porn. And they're like, dude, we wanted somebody to make a XXX porn. Sweet. And they signed him on. And then this guy's like, man, now that I'm signed on to do this XXX porn, I think I want to make a kid's movie with a talking dog. Right? I don't think that studio should keep that director on, right? So I do think that there's extremes, even in standalone movies, but in these overarching movies, I think the control needs to sway more towards the studio, because ultimately it's their plan and their dollars, and there are hundreds and hundreds, probably billions of dollars that are being spent to try to keep this giant thing moving forward. So, yeah. Other than that, I tend to agree with you. I think they should let the director of the next movie sit down with the director of the movie going on, so that he has their spin on it and they know. Well, they do that in the Marvel Studios, from what I've heard. every director, when they're like, and writers and stuff like that, when they're in that process, they are all in the same building with Kevin Feige. So Kevin Feige can literally, if there's multiple movies going on at the same time, he can literally go from one room to the next and be like, yo, did we get Iron Man? And there was a story I just heard about this when they were doing Civil War, is they didn't know if they were going to be able to get Robert Downey Jr. to play Iron Man in that movie. And so, like, literally, they were writing, what was the other movie? The Russo brothers were writing Civil War with a different villain, right? Because technically Iron Man's kind of like the villain in that movie. Because they didn't know if they were going to be able to get Robert Downey Jr. And the moment they were able to get him and sign him, Kevin Feige ran down the hallway and told them that they've got him. So, like, they do that now already with this, and then kind of bounce those ideas and stuff like that, which is why I'm curious. They're supposed to start shooting that movie in like 2 months or like a month or two. It's supposed to be this spring that they were supposed to start shooting Doctor Strange 2. So I'm curious what this late into the process, what caused these creative differences. And I don't think we'll ever know. Is it free for all time? Dude, it absolutely, almost, basically is. What do I need to do, though? I need to turn that one off. I needed to turn this one on, because it's basically free for all time. But I need to say right now to anybody that was watching that on YouTube, thank you guys very much for being here. You guys are awesome. I appreciate it. Hey, if you like this and you want to see more of these should come out every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, but they're all recorded on Monday on Twitch. So come on over to twitch.tv/IamJanko, join in the conversation live. If you can't do that or you don't want to, the 3 segments all will air Thursday, Friday, Saturday here on YouTube. So look for me here. Hit the subscribe button so that you never miss a video. I'm going to be doing a bunch of Division content coming up. Probably some Destiny, maybe. I don't know. I haven't been too much on Destiny lately. But movie reviews, TV reviews, personal stories, and this every week. So thank you guys very much for checking it out. I love you. You guys rock. And until I see you next time, keep on living the dream. People on Twitch, I'm not going anywhere. That was just my outro that I had to do that. First part of Free For All. I'm doing this, but you can't see that because my camera is not in the right spot. So you don't see where I'm pointing, but I'm pointing over there, but I don't know why. But I know why, because that's where the monitor is. Then I'm about to play something, but that means nothing to you because when I transition, it doesn't come in from that direction, which it should. I should look into that.